Hi everyone, welcome to today's webcast, Introduction to Microsoft Fabric. It's a hot topic and we have quite a few people joining us, so thank you for attending the webcast. As we go through today, I'll be presenting some of the content, and I've got Ewan with me who will help us show a little bit of Microsoft Fabric so you can see what you can do in the tool. If you want to reach out to us, add us on LinkedIn, please do all of those things, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to get in touch with us and let us know your questions. We'd love to help you answer some of them and understand how you can use Fabric in your organization. So if there's anything we don't cover today, please do get in touch and we're happy to pick it up afterwards. But today we're going to cover a whole range of topics on Microsoft Fabric. So I'll start quickly by introducing Thorogood, let you know a little bit about us as an organization and how we're able to talk to you about Microsoft Fabric and help you with this topic. Then we'll get into introducing Microsoft Fabric. We'll talk a bit about where it's come from, and then some about the different components that make up Fabric. And then, as I say, Ewan will do a bit of a demo and show you some of the things that you can do with the tool. We'll then talk a bit more about the AI capabilities, some of the impact of the change on you and your organization, where we see the opportunities of this tool going forward. And then to finish off, we'll touch quickly on licensing and a little bit on how you can get started with Fabric. So with that list of topics, we better get started because there's quite a lot to cover in the next half hour. So first off, for those of you who don't know Thorogood and haven't come across this before, we're a specialist independent consultancy. We operate globally within the data and AI specialism, and our products fall into the general categories of data engineering, data science, and data visualization. But essentially, our business is helping customers to make sense of their data using analytics solutions. And we do that by bringing together the three pillars that we have, which are analytics, technology, and business focus. And really, it's bringing our business understanding to work with organizations to get a sense of their goals, what it is they're trying to do. And then we bring along our knowledge of technology and analytics to really use data to help those organizations deliver on their goals. We do that across a range of strategies, solutions, and services. So from strategies and roadmaps to application design and development, across to things like planning and business modeling, data and analytics services, and then into training and adoption and maintenance and support, so right throughout the life cycle. And we do that with typically large enterprise customers, which fall into the key verticals we work with are consumer packaged goods, pharmaceuticals, and finance, so banking and insurance. But we also work with large complex organizations outside of that, where there are use cases that we can help those organizations with. So anywhere really that we can take their data and help them understand their organization. And we do that using a number of different technologies. So we're independent of any of the big vendors, but we partner closely with some of the key vendors in this space. So particularly important for today, Microsoft. We've been a Microsoft solutions partner for over 20 years now. And by doing that, we work closely with their teams to understand the technologies and understand how we can help our customers and our clients do better with those technologies. But we also bring that alongside a number of different vendors in the space. And what you can see on the screen really are some of the key vendors in the data and AI space. And we work with these and a number of other tools, and we bring whichever tool makes sense alongside a specific business use case. So if that's something you're thinking about, trying to decide, do you use Fabric or how do you use it alongside the other tools that you've got at the minute, we can help you think through some of how it sits in that landscape. And so then on to Microsoft Fabric, and let's start by giving a bit of an introduction. And actually, I want to start by talking a little bit about why Microsoft have launched Fabric. You've probably all heard of it. I imagine if you join the webcast, you're aware of the tool. Some of you might even have had a go with it or started on the journey of embedding it in your organization. Well, let's take a step back and look at the big picture. So Microsoft launched Fabric on 23rd of May, earlier this year, so really recently, at the Microsoft Build conference, and they launched it into public preview. Now, something worth noting about the rest of the session, what we're covering here is information that's available about the public preview. So that means there could be changes between now and when all of the components reach general availability. So if you're interested in using Fabric already, I just say make sure you take that into account and think about the fact that there could be some changes to this along the line. Now, Microsoft have launched Fabric with a vision of it being a unified analytics platform that brings together all the data and analytics tools that organizations need. That's how they positioned it when they launched it. And it brings together familiar capabilities from Power BI, from several existing Azure tools, and there are some yet to be released capabilities and new tools that are aiming to make Fabric something of a one-stop shop for data access, transformation, visualization, and analysis. To help see where Fabric differs from what's already available, I think it's probably helpful to step through some of the different iterations of Microsoft tools that support the data and analytics platform. So let's look from the point of view of a data engineer, so someone who's preparing data for other people and other teams in their organization to use. And up until maybe 2019, 2020, Microsoft's approach to the modern data platform focused on bringing together a whole range of different tools, each of those tools with its own specific purpose. And that's still a common pattern that organizations will take today. In this pattern, for a data engineer, you'll likely use Azure Data Factory to ingest data and kick off the whole process of loading data into the platform. You might use a tool like Azure Databricks for transformation. And as you're transforming data, you store that data into Azure Data Lake. Potentially, some of our clients will output data into Azure SQL Data Warehouse, where teams are going to query it using SQL, and then build data models and data visualization in a tool like Power BI. Now, alongside those kind of core components, if you like, there are additional tools in Azure that support security, governance, and best practice deployment, or other Azure tools that you can bring in to allow you to do more with the data that's in the data platform. But the overarching theme here is that we have a really high level of flexibility by combining whichever tool makes sense. But it's up to the data engineer, at least it's up to some of the architects in their organization to design that set of tools into a coherent whole picture. Now, at the end of 2019 then, Microsoft announced a preview of Azure Synapse Analytics. And what that did was to bring a lot of those tools closer together and into a common workspace. And so at least for data transformation, orchestration, and storage, those were all brought into the same interface. And then that had a tighter integration story with some of the wider tool set, things like Power BI, for example. So typically in this scenario, the data engineer is using all of those components through one user interface. So you can see those, the top four really through Synapse, but still bringing in some from outside, so data modeling and visualization through Power BI, and then combining it with some of those additional add-on tools for data governance, code management, and low-code automation, and so on. So you've still got a bit of separation in what's going on here. More than that even, there's a separation between the different tools within Synapse. So you're still very aware of all the separate components. And while they're easier to integrate and easier to use when they're all in one place, in some sense, even at the Synapse stage, you're managing the parts as if they're separate components. And so you've still got that separation of the tools within Synapse, and you've got even more of a separation, if you like, between the data engineering work that goes on in Synapse and the visualization and analysis activity that's more happening in something like Power BI. And so that brings us to Microsoft Fabric and the new vision for where data analytics happens in a single platform from Microsoft's point of view. So Fabric puts the main tools in the Azure data landscape into one common interface, much closer than they've ever been before, with a better integration story and even a different licensing approach that removes a lot of the complexity from having all of those different components doing a lot of different tasks and all managed separately. Now, before I get too excited about the topic of licensing and why in this case it might be a little more interesting than it usually is to think about licensing, let's take a step back and look at the different components that are built into Fabric, because I'm sure people are really keen to see exactly what it can do. So we'll step through all the different components and let's break it down in a little bit more detail. So first off, within Fabric, we have Data Factory. A Data Factory is about moving data from one place to another and transforming the data according to how you're going to use it, typically without writing much code, maybe even without writing any code. And so there are two core components that we need to be aware of in Data Factory, and these may be familiar. The first is pipelines. Pipelines allow us to copy data from one place to another or schedule and orchestrate different tasks in terms of the data transformations. So pipelines basically allow us to set up the step-by-step processes, and then you can set it on a schedule, or you can set it to trigger when new data is available, various different ways to trigger the pipelines. And then we have data flows, and data flows allows you to do more fine-grained transformation on the data sets. Again, it's no code, but it allows you to do a step-by-step, each transformation you need to apply to the data set, and you can see what's happening to the data as you go through. So if you're used to using pipelines from Azure Data Factory, and I will differentiate here, Fabric Data Factory, the pipelines from Azure Data Factory are the same pipelines that have been available in Azure Synapse, and those are the same pipelines that are being brought into Fabric as well. So those allow you to copy data from a wide variety of sources and orchestrate some of the data transformation steps. And then the data flows here are referred to as data flow Gen 2. Those flexible step-by-step data transformation, like I say, if anyone's used wrangling data flows in Azure Data Factory, they'll seem familiar. The other place that you'll really recognize this interface from is Power Query and Power BI. And in fact, if you look at the Microsoft documentation for it, it says working with Dataflow Gen 2 feels like coming home. That's how similar it is to Power Query. It really has all the same features and functionality, and even an ability to copy and paste some of the steps to get your data flows built up that way. Interestingly, for people who have been using Azure Data Factory and Synapse, if you've used the mapping data flows, those haven't been brought into Fabric, at least yet. So you may need to migrate those flows or look at an alternative approach for how the data transformations will work if you built them in that way before. So just something to be aware of if you've been using those tools before. If you're coming straight into Fabric, don't worry about that at all. The data flows and pipelines between them give you a lot of flexibility to do your own data transformations, all within the Fabric interface. Next, we have much of the Synapse offering that Microsoft have been offering through the Synapse Analytics tool, all brought into Fabric. So Synapse Data Engineering offers Spark-based notebooks. So if you want to write your transformations using code and using scripts, so it's on the no-code option. But if you want to do it right in code, you can do that in Python, R, SQL, Scala, or C#. And all of that runs on the very scalable Spark-based Synapse notebooks. Synapse Data Science brings together a collection of tools to complete data science and machine learning activities, whether that's interactively building exploratory data analysis code, to using machine learning algorithms that are optimized to train large-scale models on Spark. There are many more tools planned as well for Synapse Data Science, so keep an eye on that one if that's the space that you're interested in. Synapse Data Warehousing, anything you want to do with SQL, connecting SQL-based tools, or if you've got teams used to writing views and procedures based in SQL, all of that is now available through Synapse Data Warehousing. And finally, Synapse Real-Time Analytics, which is specifically aimed at real-time use cases. So if you really are looking at up-to-date data, things like data coming through from machines or real-time call center data, a couple of use cases that we've seen for real-time analytics. And Synapse supports that as well with the use of a specific tool for it. Bringing it one step on then, we have, of course, Power BI, a major player in the analytics and business intelligence platform space, and one that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with and fond of. Microsoft have built all of Fabric into the familiar user interface from Power BI. And so if you're used to using Power BI, it's still accessed in the way it always has been. And basically, there's no change to your familiar reports and dashboards, except that they've added some better integration for things like data coming directly from the data lake. So we'll talk in a minute about one lake, but there's a direct lake mode. So if you've got data in your data lake and you want to access it using Power BI, that's now going to have performance that's comparable to what you get from some of the best data warehouse platforms available. There's also improved end-to-end governance and lineage. Some of that's directly in Fabric, and you can see what data sets are being transformed and used within Fabric. Some of that then combines in the tools from another Azure tool, Azure Purview, which is used for data lineage. And then Microsoft are also adding in the next generation of AI tooling with Copilot capabilities for Power BI, which again, we'll touch on a little bit later in the session. Finally, one of the new tools to complete the kind of headline lineup of components in Fabric, we have Data Activator. And it's a no-code Microsoft Fabric experience that empowers the users to drive actions automatically from data. It follows a three-step process. So first up, you connect to your data. That can be Power BI data sets, event streams, warehouse, lakehouse, etc. Secondly, you can detect actionable conditions, define patterns in the data such as thresholds, or more complex patterns such as values that are changing trends over time. And then all of that can be used to trigger actions. So that could trigger an email or a Teams alert or you can connect it up to some of the other tools for more complex actions using things like Power Automate. So Data Activator, a new tool, really an AI-focused tool to look at the actions that you can take as a next step. Finally, I said I'd talk about OneLake. This underpins all of Fabric, and OneLake is the foundation on which all of the Fabric surfaces are built, really. The lake itself is built on top of Azure Data Lake Storage, sometimes referred to as ADLS Gen 2. So it interacts well with existing pipelines. All of the tools in Fabric use a common storage format of Delta Lake, embracing open standards, and again, that helps integrate it with a really wide tool set. And then in keeping with that open approach, Microsoft have introduced new shortcuts so that you can connect the data in existing Azure Data Lake environments as well as Amazon S3. And Microsoft have announced plans to bring Google Cloud Storage into that list as well. With all of those shortcuts and loading your data into this platform, really that underpins Microsoft Fabric. Like I say, all of the components store data in OneLake in the Delta Lake format. And so when you set up a table in OneLake, it then becomes available for you to access as either a file in the data lake, or you can go through a SQL endpoint if you want to write queries or use other tools, or a Power BI data set if you're looking to build Power BI reports or use other multidimensional technologies. So once you've set the data up, set it up once, and then you can use it across a really wide range of tools and scenarios. I've got really excited about a lot of the tools in there, but I think the best way to let you see it all is if I hand over to Ewan now. He can show you a bit of what you can do in Fabric.
Thanks, Andrew, and hi, everyone. So first, kind of let me set the scene for you all for the demo here. Let's imagine that I'm an account manager for a consumer packaged goods or a CPG firm, responsible for identifying over and underperforming products and assessing the opportunities and vulnerabilities for my brand. So the data set that I'm about to show you combines our internal sales data and external consumption data to provide a view on trade profitability. That's all about understanding the margin the manufacturer is making on its products and the value of those products to the retailer. So being able to analyze this information across several different business axes, such as product, category, channel, customer, and across the income and cost drivers, can deliver powerful insights for my team. And these insights will enable us to make more informed decisions, such as where to place our trade investments for greatest potential return, how to best optimize our product portfolio, how to set pricing levels, and which products to push in different channels. And having this true understanding of our value to our customers and the potential threats and opportunities to our brands can help us to defend our position and spot growth potential with our customers to foster a mutually beneficial relationship. From a technical standpoint, our IT team have placed the relevant data sets into an Azure Data Lake Storage or ADLS location. My team and I have access to Fabric for the purpose of applying our business knowledge where needed and for reporting on the data. So let me just take you across to Fabric now. And this will look and feel very similar to those of you familiar with Power BI service. And that's because the extra Fabric elements have simply been added to the service. So if I move to the bottom left of the screen here, we can see that by clicking on this icon, I can now access the other components of Fabric. So for example, if I click on Data Factory here, what it's going to show me once I navigate back to my workspace is that I can now create a number of Data Factory related items here in Fabric, such as a data pipeline, a lakehouse, etc. Of course, one of the largest additions to Fabric is OneLake, and this idea of a single copy of data without data movement or duplication. So if I navigate to my lakehouse here, we can see that through this Get Data button, I can connect through a shortcut directly to the Azure Data Lake Storage that my IT team have set up, and also to Amazon S3, if that's our preferred method of storage, and support for Google Cloud Storage is coming soon, as Andrew mentioned earlier. And what this shortcut will do, it will allow updates in ADLS to automatically flow through to Fabric, hence the no data duplication here. And if I navigate to my files here, these are the tables that are being connected to in ADLS. And we can see if I just open one of these up, that these are underpinned by Delta Parquet files, and this is the standard storage format for any data stored in Fabric. And my preview's taken a little while to load, but let me just give you an idea of the sales table here. And we can see that across my primary keys here, we have a number of metrics such as sell-in volume, gross sales value, and a number of overhead related items too. So we've got, for example, market research, sales overheads, trade overheads. You get the idea. I've connected to my data and I've got tables on top of the files. But what if I'm not quite ready to progress into Power BI yet? So previously to Fabric, I would have had to make any data transformations that I I wanted to directly in Power Query, but that's no longer the case. So let's say that as an account manager, I know two things that I want to remedy with my data. The first is that I know that due to the pace that the sales data gets to the reporting teams, there can sometimes be duplicates in the data mist. I'd like to get rid of them before even opening Power BI. I've got a little bit of experience with Power Query, so I'm fairly confident that I can manage to do this through a data flow. So let me navigate to a data flow for you now here. And upon opening this screen, again, this will look and feel very similar to those of you who have experience with Power Query and its step-by-step approach. You can see here that in the first 4 steps, I access my lakehouse, I access my sales table, because that's the one I know that has duplicates in, and I simply add on another step across my 4 primary keys here to remove the duplicates. And that's it, done. It will then write back to the fact sales table, removing my duplicates, and my data is now cleansed from that point of view. So let's say that after I've removed my duplicates, I want to create some more advanced KPIs for use in my reporting later on. And I don't really know how to do that through Power BI's kind of native languages of MDX and DAX. Luckily, someone in my team has a bit of experience with PySpark. So if I open up a notebook here in Fabric, we can see that I can simply reference the PySpark language here, import my packages, read in my tables directly from my lakehouse. So here we've gone from fact for the sales table and the time table. We join those tables and then simply create our measures. So here we've gone for a rolling average measure and a sell-through rate measure. And then we write the enhanced table back to my lakehouse as a separate table. So here we've called it fact sales enhanced. And it's important to note that this doesn't have to be in PySpark. So if a member of my team was more familiar with R or SQL, for example, there's a number of Spark compatible languages here that I can write in my notebook. So let's just pop into another notebook quickly, just to check that everything's working as expected. So here I've read in from my fact sales table from my lakehouse. And we can see that this is the table that I showed you earlier, exactly as expected, read in from ADLS. But here I read in my enhanced fact sales table, and we can see that now from the same lakehouse, I have my advanced KPIs available for use in downstream reporting. So I've got my rolling average and I've got my sell-through rate. So that's great. I've removed my duplicates and I've added my advanced KPIs. But as an account manager, I don't want to be coming into Fabric every day and running first my data flow and then my notebook. It's too much of a burden on my time, and there's too much potential for human error. And that's where data pipelines come in for me here. So if I just navigate here to Fabric's data factory, we can see that I've created a simple data pipeline for us here, where I first call my data flow to remove my duplicates, and then I call my notebook to create my advanced KPIs. And this doesn't have to be manually run either. I can schedule this to run at a certain time every day if needed. So for example, if I know that my ADLS tables are refreshed at 7 a.m. every day, I could schedule my pipeline to run at 8 a.m. every day. So by the time that the data users get in ready to start analyzing the data at 9 a.m., everything's cleansed and updated. That brings us to our next step, really. We've cleansed our data, we've added some advanced KPIs, and now we head to the step that we all know and love, with the Power BI reporting. And for the purposes of this demo, we already had a pre-developed Power BI report that connected directly to the ADLS location. We've simply changed the source of that report to be our automatically created SQL endpoint in Fabric instead. So this report hasn't required any redevelopment, and we've been able to keep this report that we've built over time and invested in. But by changing the source to be the SQL endpoint, I've now made it possible to access my enhanced table and my cleansed tables with little effort. And this report is great for me as an account manager now. So for example, if I look at Climatize here, we can see that Climatize is my fastest growing brand in terms of operating profit and retailer profit. And now I can work with our customers to find a mutually beneficial relationship for this brand. So hopefully that's been a useful example of an end-to-end workflow here in Fabric. I'll hand you back to Andrew now to discuss the integration of AI with Fabric and the effect of Fabric on Microsoft's other offerings.
So now you've seen Microsoft Fabric in action, let's take a little bit of a look, like I said, at the AI capabilities that Microsoft are bringing into the tool. So Microsoft have promised that AI is going to be integrated into every layer in Fabric. There are going to be co-pilots across every tool, at least across most of the tools, and they're planning generative AI and natural language query on your organization's data. From a security perspective, data used in the AI models will remain within your organization's tenant, your space, and organizational data isn't going to be used for training of any of the underlying models. So if anyone's worried about Microsoft and other companies getting access to their data through the models, that's not going to happen according to the terms and conditions. So this allows you to leverage AI to get deeper insights from your data faster. Just some examples of what to expect from that. So in Data Factory, you'll be able to chat with Copilot to describe data transformation in natural language, and use Copilot to schedule and run and manage data flows. In Synapse Data Science, you'll be able to chat with Copilot to understand how best to analyze the data or create and configure machine learning models, for example, or even just write faster code using the Copilot. Similar things in Synapse Data Engineering. You write code faster, use it to clean and document code, and automatically update queries and stored procedures if you're trying to migrate between tools. And then Data Activator is a tool all about AI, really. It's connecting insights from the changing data to actions, and you could use Copilot to do things like configuring notifications and starting workflows. And then in Power BI, actually Power BI is one of the tools that already has some of this in public preview. Most of these AI bits are either still to come or in private preview. Power BI Desktop, metrics and calculations, and DAX code are two things that you can already get Copilot to help you with. In Power BI Service, there's a private preview available of creating entire reports and asking analysis questions using natural language. So a few senses there of what might be to come, what Microsoft have hinted at for the future. So with that introduction of Microsoft Fabric, I'm sure the next big question for everyone is, what is the impact of the change and what is it going to mean for your organization? So Fabric obviously builds on a lot of existing Azure tools. There's no sign yet of the individual tools like Data Factory and Azure Data Lake going anywhere either. So how can you position to start getting advantages from Fabric, given you probably don't want to rip out all of the existing data platform that you've built up in Azure, or for that matter, in other competing platforms? So let's look at a couple of different scenarios. First off, the two scenarios we mentioned back at the start of the webcast. Either you've got a load of different tools, or you're already using a combined tool like Synapse, it could be Microsoft or another platform. Well, in those cases, one option, you could migrate everything into Fabric now that the capabilities are available there. Of course, like I say, you might decide you don't want to rip up everything you've got at the minute. And in that case, you could keep your existing data pipelines, but export the final data outputs into Fabric. So use the OneLake platform and either surface it as shortcuts or load the data actually into the OneLake. Either way, it becomes your central repository where everyone in the organization can go and look for and access data in a single location. And then if they need to do small transformation or mapping on top of it, that's an option. Then we have users with Power BI, and in particular, this is interesting for organizations already using Power BI Premium. In that case, all the Fabric tools are already available to Power BI Premium users. So in the same way you're used to accessing reports, you now get some of those wider data processing capabilities and toolkit, provided you've got the license there. Like I said, Power BI Premium includes it, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to get to it if you don't have that in just a bit. Again, as I've said, a lot of these features are currently in public preview. So while I'm suggesting some of the ways to move to it, you want to look at how you might do that in the future. For most organizations, it might be starting to use it now, but not necessarily replacing everything you have. So I take this time while things are in preview to get to know how the tool can enhance what you're doing with data in your organization. But just bear in mind that things may change a little bit over the coming months. Now, if you're wondering why you should be interested in using Fabric, talk about how you might start using it, and maybe the extra tools is an exciting thing. But we've already got all of these tools separately. Well, at least for some organizations, I think the fact that these have come together should be really exciting. And I kind of hinted earlier that the licensing in this case comes into play more than you'd think. And that's because where all the individual tools previously have been offered as platform as a service or PaaS tools, the new Fabric platform is offered as SaaS or software as a service. Now, without getting too deep into what that means from a technical perspective, in the PaaS platforms with the individual pieces or with Synapse, you manage the scaling of each resource. Where in Fabric, you're setting one overall capacity, and Microsoft Fabric then shares that capacity between all the different resources automatically. And so overall changes, there's a few things else that come with combining them into one platform. So if I bring those up, there's a familiar security model So it follows what you've had in Power BI. It's also very similar to Teams if you're using that. So you set the permission for a group of people, you set permission for a workspace, and then within that workspace, you can use all of these Fabric tools. Single capacity management, like I say, that allows you to set up your overall capacity, and then Fabric will figure out how to balance that between the different tools that are available, work out what's higher priority, what's lower priority, and so on, and make sure that you can use that capacity to do all of your tasks. We mentioned OneLake, the ability to store once and connect from anywhere through various different connectors and access it in a common data format across all of the different tools. So really the ability to store data once and connect to it from anywhere, from many different tools, and not being locked into one specific vendor tool, both really useful things to have. And then it's multi-cloud. So if you're storing your data at the minute in AWS S3 or the shortcuts coming soon for Google Cloud Storage, you can connect to those directly from Fabric without having to duplicate the data across at every point. So what does that mean for different users in your organization? Let's talk about it from 4 different personas. So first, data engineers. You now have an alternative set of tools to use. More than that, I think it's useful to have a single repository that you can put the data into for all the users in your organization to then access it. For data scientists, the fact that data is stored in open formats means that you can use a really wide tool set, and it makes it flexible for data transformation or feature engineering within the platform as well. For data analysts, and this is getting more towards the core audience, I think, of Fabric, data reporting and data transformation tools are all available in one place for those users. And they're now getting enhanced access to robust data engineering tools available when they need them and available where they've been using Power BI reports. So you're no longer having to go to IT and request access to some of the Azure tools. You can use them right there in the Fabric interface. And for data users, again, your reports and your data are in one place. If there are data transformations and mappings and so on that you want to work on or work with analysts or power users on, you can collaborate on those in the Fabric interface. So that brings us towards thinking about how organizations might decide to employ this and bring it into the way they work. And one obvious way is to use this as a centralized single platform where you want to simplify getting all of these tools into one place. And so you have your data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, and all your data users accessing it in one place, transforming it in there. And there are clients that we've worked with where that's going to be a real benefit to them. The simplicity of managing this all as one platform, rather than having to cope with all the different tools and figure out how to structure the overall data platform from its individual components, you can look at simplifying this into one platform. But then for other organizations, a lot of the organizations we work with at the enterprise level, bigger organizations, probably have architecture teams or data engineering teams who want to have the flexibility of being able to manage all of the different tools as separate components and set up the interaction between them in the way that they want. In that case, where I see this being really useful is for an extra kind of self-service layer on top of that, or a kind of democratized analysis layer. So maybe rather than viewing it as one platform for the whole organization, the central engineering, data engineering might happen outside of Fabric and then place it into Fabric to present almost kind of business level data lakes where different users from the different departments can come in, have access to their data that they're granted access to, and run whatever transformations they need on top of it. So maybe marketing are using what is a data set that's been produced by finance, and so they need to transform it in a particular way. Well, maybe someone in the marketing team can set that up within Fabric, build some of the transformations and push it back into OneLake so that other people in the marketing team can use it. And it gives that flexibility, whether it's the departments or the teams of data scientists or data analysts, to use the data as appropriate from those different places. So that's just a bit of the thinking. I know this is a very early stage and Fabric is new to all of us, but really trying to present how we think this might play out in organizations. If you want to get started with this, if you've got Power BI licenses, Pro and Premium per user Power BI licenses don't change. Power BI Premium capacity comes with new access to the Fabric capabilities. So if you've been using the Premium capacity in your organization, you should get access to the Fabric capabilities. You might need an admin to turn that on in some cases. The other way you can do it is Microsoft are introducing new Fabric pay-as-you-go, which is offered through Azure. Again, that's capacity licenses. The larger capacities within that will allow you to share Power BI reports as well. So, in some cases, looking very similar to Power BI Premium capacity, but it takes a slightly different model. So where Power BI Premium capacity is monthly cost, There is the ability to scale up for short periods of time, but mostly it's monthly setup. The Microsoft Fabric pay-as-you-go allows you to start it, anything from a minute upwards in its build per second, and you can scale it up and down. It's not as flexible as some of the tools. You do have to tell it what capacity you want, but it's pay-as-you-go, and you can change that capacity as and when you need it. Coming later this year, we expect it to be a reserved instance option, which should offer a more price competitive option if you're committing to having it running for a full year or for 3 years. You'll be able to get that reserved instance. Again, that's future expectations, so it may change, but that's what they're saying at the minute. If you want the latest information on the licenses, I've put the link on the screen, so feel free to go to that address and you can see more about it. But really, key thing, if you're using Power BI Premium, you can get it already. If you're not, you can do that through very flexible pay-as-you-go licensing on Microsoft Fabric itself for other users. And if you just want to try it out, Microsoft are offering a Fabric trial. If you start that at the minute, you can get a free Fabric trial for up to 60 days for any Power BI Pro users or Premium Pro users. And that will set up a trial capacity to let you try all of the features provided by Microsoft Fabric during that 60-day period. So you can already get access to it and see all of the things that Ewan's been doing. You can see how that works. To wrap up, for some organizations, this is going to be joining you soon anyway if you've got Power BI Premium. For other organizations, maybe you can see some of the potential benefits that you could get from this. It's all very new, and it's worth thinking about how you can make the most of it. So if we can be of any help, please talk to us. We're happy to help look at this and figure out how it will fit in your organization and how it might sit alongside some of the other tools and approaches that you're using already. So talk to us. Both you and I have our email addresses on the screen, so feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk more about how you can use this in your organization.